Joe Hisaishi is one of my all-time favorite composers. His style of writing is so unique and instantly recognizable that it's no wonder why it's often referred to as the Studio Ghibli sound. Hisaishi blends different techniques from so many different musical genres that it can be difficult to try and nail down just what exactly gives his sound such a beautifully ambiguous and nostalgic feel to it. However, if you want to learn how to take any chord progression you come up with and make it sound similar and evoke the same kind of emotions, then there are only 6 simple steps you need to follow. Now, as a disclaimer before we get started, the rest of this video does require some basic understanding of music theory, but don't worry if that's not your strength. I'll do my best to explain everything as we go along, but if you feel like you could use some extra help, like learning how to make chords, make extended chords, understanding how the scales are made, anything like that, I'll include a few helpful links in the description of this video. The 2 biggest concepts we'll need to keep in mind are extended harmony and chordal/quintal harmony. Extended harmony is a term used broadly to describe chords with more than just 3 notes. You can add a 7th, a 9th, 11th, or even a 13th note into a chord to make the most out of the extended harmonies. Hisaishi tends to use a lot of 7th and 9th chords in his pieces, and in this video we'll be using both. Chordal and quintal harmony is used to describe harmonies or chords built off of 4th and 5th intervals. This can be used to describe chords built entirely out of these intervals, or even regular chords written so that they make the most use of any 4th or 5th intervals that may appear naturally between their notes. In this video, we'll be using both approaches to capture the Studio Ghibli sound. All right, let's get started. So let's pull up my thing here. I've got my tempo set to 80 beats per minute. That's just a beat I like. It's a little bit faster than 1 beat per minute. And I think it works well for this style of music. Then for my quantized, I've got it set to whole notes so that anytime I play a note, it just fills the whole measure, makes it so much easier for this. So the first step we're going to go with is picking our key and chord progression. To keep things simple, I'm going to stick with the key of C major, which means that the chords I can work with are C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and all of their extended harmonies. All of those can be written using just the white keys, which is why I'm using this key. But let's pick my chord progression. I'm going to go with the 4, 5, 3, and 6. So that's F major, G major, and I'm going to make it that a G major 7th, E minor, and A minor. This chord progression, the major 4th, major 5, 7, minor 3, and minor 6, is a very common chord progression found in lots of Japanese and anime music in those styles. It's commonly referred to as like the Japanese 4 chords, and I just figured it was a nice, appropriate chord progression for us to use in this video. I'm going to take that, copy and paste it so that it repeats, and you'll notice that I've left 4 measures blank before here. That's very important. You're going to want to keep that space empty. You can have more if you'd like. The least, like the smallest amount I'd like you to have is 2, but it's up to you. And you'll see why later on I am leaving that space blank. But real quick, let's listen to the chord progression. Awesome. So that's it for step 1. Pretty easy. The second step is going to focus on this first chord, the F major. What we need to do is find the dominant 7th chord of this chord. Now, what is the dominant 7th chord? This is basically just the 5th chord in a key with a 7th extension. So looking at the F major, we think what scale starts with an F major, and of course the answer is an F major scale. And we find out what the 5th chord of that scale is, and that would be C major. and adding the 7th on it, that would give us C major 7. Now, the dominant major 7th chord is a strategy used in a lot of film music and a lot of classical music. It's used because the major 7th chord really wants to resolve to the 1st chord. So in any key, in our usual key of C major that we'd be writing the rest of this piece in, the major chord, the dominant 7th would be G major, right here. So G major 7 typically wants to resolve to the 1st chord. We're not doing that here, but it's a good strategy. It helps focus all the attention on the 1st chord. So if you listen to this, it resolves very nicely. It helps focus a lot on this chord here, on the F major. Now, we don't want to bring too much focus, so we're going to round this out a bit more by adding a 9th to it. The major 7th add 9 chord. This is a very commonly used chord in Joe Hisaishi's music and is commonly referred to as like the Ghibli chord. It's the magical chord that gives it that sound. And if you listen to it, you can start to hear that. But we're not done just yet. We need to revoice this. We have the notes for the chord, but we're going to take the 1st scale degree, the very first note in the chord. We're going to bring that up 2 octaves by just hitting shift and up arrow. Next, we're going to take the 5th scale degree, or the 3rd note in the chord, and just bring it up 1. And now let's listen to it. There we go. So what we've done is we've revoiced it so that the top 3 notes are perfect 4ths from each other, and the bottom 2 are a perfect 5th. The perfect 4th has a very naturally ambiguous sound to it, a very nostalgic, floaty sound to it, and it's used a lot by Studio Ghibli in their music. And this configuration is usually well to bring attention to the F major chord without snapping us out of that nostalgic feel. And it's going to sound even better once we do a little bit more stuff with it later on. But for now, we're going to step into step 3. So step 3, we're going to look at the 1st chord in our key, which would be a C major. And we're going to write out the C major 7th add 9 chord, which, now that I look at it, you'll notice is the same chord we used here. That's not always going to be the case. This just happened to be the case because we chose F major to be the chord that we were leading to. This could be any chord depending on which chord progression you go with. But this one we're also going to revoice, but in a different way, and arguably the most important way in this video. We're going to take the 3rd scale degree and the 7th scale degree, or the 2nd and 4th note in the chord, and shift them up 1 octave. What this does is gives us 4 perfect 5th intervals between our chords. And this is the trademark Joe Hisaishi Studio Ghibli chord. Let's take a listen to it. All right, so that chord is used as the opening chord in One Summer's Day in Spirited Away. It's also used in Princess Mononoke's theme. Got a little tongue-tied there. But it's used in a lot of the movies. And it's one of his calling cards as a composer. Whenever you hear this chord, it's almost, in my opinion, like 9 times out of 10, I'm going to think Studio Ghibli, Spirited Away. I love that song. And starting your piece with this chord is going to be a real solid strategy and way to start off your piece with this nostalgic, ambiguous feel to it that we're trying to achieve. Now on to step 4. What we're going to do is fill up the space between these 2 chords. So for this, we're going to look at these 2 notes. We have a C and we have an E. We want to fill the space between these 2 with any notes we want. They don't have to be in the key. They don't have to be carefully thought of. Whatever you want, you can just randomly throw in some if you want, whatever you're going to do. Personally, I am thinking I want to kind of climb from the C to the E. And I'm going to do a half step here because that resolves nicely. And I'm going to do just the D there. So we have C, D, D sharp, E. Now that we have those notes, what we're going to do is we're going to build some chordal chords out of this using only perfect fourth intervals. I mentioned earlier about how perfect fourths sound very ambiguous and nostalgic, and that's perfect for the feel we're looking for. So we're going to build chords made only of that interval. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let's do one more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to do the same over here. And there we go. You're going to see that definitely some of these notes don't belong in this key, but that's good for now. And I'll explain why in a moment. But for now, we're going to move on to step 5. And what we're going to do is revisit our chord progression. Now we have it so it's 4 chords that repeat twice. What we're going to do is take that first playthrough and delete all the notes except for the root notes or the bottom note of each chord. Then we're going to use these to build some more chordal chords, but these are going to be a bit different. These chordal chords are only going to use 3 notes, and we want to stay in the key this time. So no sharp or flat notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Uh-oh, all right, so right off the bat, we've run into a note that doesn't belong in the key. What you're going to do in situations like this is move up 1 more so that we're working with an augmented fourth instead of a perfect fourth, which should still help serve our purpose. Then after that augmented fourth, you're just going to do a perfect fourth again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so there we're going to build the other chords just like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Build it over here. All right, so now we have our chordal chords right here, and they're all in the key. Now let me explain something. Earlier, these 4 chords, we didn't care where the notes came from, inside the key, outside the key. Well, specifically these two. These 2 were kind of predetermined, but for the middle 2, we didn't care where the notes came from. And the reason why is in the beginning of lots of Joe Hisaishi's music, especially in One Summer's Day from Spirited Away, he starts out very atonal, which is a fancy way of saying he doesn't have a key. He's using any notes he wants, anything that sounds nice. There's a bunch of reasoning behind it, but for the sake of this video, we're just going to say he chose whatever he felt like choosing. Now, that's all fine and dandy for the beginning. It gives us a very nostalgic and ambiguous feeling. Again, wow, I've used those words so many times. But that's how I'm going to describe it. So it gives us that feeling we're going for. But we're eventually going to want to focus on a specific key. So after these first 4, when we've been all over the place, don't know where we're at, this one focuses in a little bit more on a key, but doesn't use any chords from the key. This is a chord made out of 2 perfect fourths. That's not really a chord found in the scale naturally, typically, I should say. And all the chords are made like that. So we're starting to get closer to the key of the piece, but we haven't arrived there quite yet. Now down here, we have arrived completely. We have our chords. They focus on the key. They're the diatonic chords. They belong in that key, and it's going to help focus the piece to let us know where home is. So typically, your melody would start over these 4 and have that very airy, floaty feeling, and then it would solidify a bit more here. And for step 6, our final step, we're just going to add a few little changes. So I'm going to do a bit of voice leading here. I'm going to just bring that down. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about voice leading in this video, but I'll come out with a video later for those of you who are interested. It's pretty simple. That's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to do much with it. I don't want to spend too much time. And next, I'm going to reduce the velocity down here, which is basically just telling the computer to play these notes a lot softer, because the music in Studio Ghibli is very often, at least for the version we're going for, very soft. So then I'm going to select the trim tool, click off. Well, first I'm going to click off to make sure it doesn't. There we go. While holding down the alternate button, I'm going to left click and just trim these chords a little bit to make it sound like an arpeggio, so we can roll into the chords instead of playing them all at once. And I'm just going to do this for the first four, these ambiguous chords. And there we have it. That's the end of step 6. Let's listen to the finished product. There we go. Now let's listen to what it might sound like with a melody written over it. Well, that's it for this video. There are detailed notes on each of the 6 steps in this video's description, in case you'd like to copy and paste them for future reference. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And if there's anything else you'd like to see in future videos, let me know in the comments. But for now, have a great day and keep composing.